welcome to this week's edition of Enthralling Conversations. This week, I'm very excited to interview Jack Navarro, who is doing a cross-country cycle on behalf of the Epilepsy Foundation and people with epilepsy. And do you want to introduce us to your friend Will today as well?
Yes, this is Will Linehan. Will is kind of the trip boss and is helping me with the trip, and he's been wonderful.
All right, well, great. Will, thanks for keeping Jack on the bike. That's good to see. So Jack, I know you started on September 20th. You're doing a 55-day cross-country tour from California to Florida. Tell me, why are you doing this and why for epilepsy?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. It's great to be with you today. Boy, it sounds tiring when you say it, 55 days in cross-country. I'm really doing it for two reasons, Laura. The first one is for the challenge of it. I thought it would be enjoyable. I sort of have a history in athletics and endurance athletics, and I thought it would be kind of a fun thing to do. And separately, secondly, I wanted to be sort of purpose-driven, and so that's where epilepsy comes in. And I've had some friends that have been, and their children who have been very seriously affected by epilepsy. I don't think there's enough awareness out there, and I really thought it would be great to both raise awareness and raise a little money as well. So that's really my purpose in
so you mentioned in your overview on Facebook and on the Epilepsy Foundation website that you were writing really for three young adults that inspired you. I think it was Abby and Sevi and Liv. What are the challenges that you've experienced? I think they're children of your colleagues. What have you experienced of the challenges that they have and the challenges that their families face?
Yeah, I think the thing that has sort of surprised me most is the fact that there's not sort of a set protocol or cure or even a sort of a set regimen, that they really have to experiment with some pharmaceuticals that can have pretty dramatic effects on the children. Yeah. And it's very hard for them to really live a normal life. They look normal, they look wonderful, but yet they have this very challenging situation that makes it hard for them to go to school and hard for them to work and hard for them to really have a normal life. So it really kind of inspired me to think, well, this is something that could use a little bit higher level of awareness.
Right. And, you mentioned also on your Facebook page that you wanted to raise money to support research efforts, but to also support everyday things that people with epilepsy could do to improve the quality of life. So when you think about research, if you could support that, what would you like research to solve for?
Well, when I talk to the parents of these young people that we're talking about, a gentleman by the name of Doug Warner and Spencer Moses, what their frustration is based on the fact that it's very hard to know what to do, and obviously you don't necessarily need a cure if you can have a good set of protocols that you can follow, but it's even hard to have a set of protocols, and they change over time as kids grow and grow up. Sometimes things get better and sometimes things get worse. And so if there was more research into these ideas about how to allow some of these children to have a better day-to-day life and an easier day-to-day life, that's what I'd love to see, Laura. That's what I'd love to see.
I think when we talk about a cure, obviously there's so many different underlying causes for epilepsy. It's not one disease that we're trying to cure. For most, seizure control is kind of what the penultimate piece is that we're looking for, right? So how do you get active seizure control? 30% of the people with epilepsy still don't have controlled seizures. Most of those that do, they're on medications, as you talked about, and it can take years to get the right medication, right? So one of the things that's exciting about research right now, it's not just about therapeutics, it's about finding different devices that might be helpful, like wearables, implantables, machine learning, brain implants, implanted EEGs, algorithms that can predict seizures so people can have seizure control, seizure rescue therapies. So there's really when you talk about research, it's not just therapeutics anymore. There's a whole world of technology and innovation out there that can really change the landscape for some of these kids. So it's exciting, and we really appreciate the support. Jack, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about your cycling journey. As I mentioned to you before we got on, my partner Kevin is a very avid cyclist. So I've learned more about cycling the last 15 years than I ever wanted to know. He always says he's got 6-hour legs and a 2-hour butt. So I certainly know that 55 days in a row of across country riding is a lot of time in the saddle. So tell me, how is the journey going? How far have you gone? How many miles are you doing a day? Will, how is he holding up? How are you supporting the journey?
Yeah, maybe I can make a few comments, and then I'd love to have Will make a few comments, because he really makes it easy. First of all, physically, we are day 30. Now, we just took 3 days off in Austin, and I think the trip will be more like 52 days than 55 days. So we're just over halfway in the trip, and so far, with a few sort of minor physical exceptions, it's gone pretty well. And those of the people who might be listening to this that aren't cyclists, your comment about time in the saddle is such an important thing. It's amazing how many trips have been made more difficult or sabotaged by time in the saddle that people weren't used to.
Right.
And I have to say that, cross my fingers here, in that area, I've been quite lucky. And, I've spent somewhere between 4 and 7 hours a day on the bike. My philosophy is to sort of get on the bike and off the bike as soon as I can, and then sort of recover. So far it's been pretty good physically, I have to say. The 3 days before we got into Austin, we decided to make 4 days into 3. And I rode 90, 85, and 80 miles, and it felt pretty good. So, so far, cross my fingers, I've been pretty lucky. Well, what would you say about the sort of endurance part of it?
It's a challenge. I mean, you settle into this routine, and you kind of wake up in the morning, you know how far you're going to go, you know exactly what you're going to eat, and where the water breaks are going to be. We're able to see each other about every 20 miles or so to top off water and do snacks and things like that. And, it's amazing seeing Jack's tenacity and that focus he has when he's on the bike. We're, of course, enjoying the experience, enjoying the scenery, but when it comes to the endurance mindset, you feel like you wake up in the morning, I can barely get a few photos off before he's on the bike and out of there, going down to the next destination.
We might also comment, Laura, without going on too long, that we leave as early as we can, and it's still safe. And particularly, we've just come through the hottest part of the trip, and particularly in the desert areas, that's been quite important. And so if you can get an hour or two in before it gets too hot and the sun gets up too high, it can really be helpful, because the sun and the heat can really be a challenge.
Well, I think you probably inspired so many people that are, either recreational athletes, maybe ex-pro athletes, or amateur athletes, to do something like this to support a cause. I think, Will, from what you've said, we have to remember that you don't just go out there and do this by yourself. To do a cross-country tour takes a team of people, Will and your team car, to support you. So, it's not just as easy as saying, do you have the endurance? You've really got to get the team support along the way. And I know that's something some people probably don't think about. So tell me, Jack and Will, when you're finally done with this, your 55 days are over and you finish in Florida, what do you hope that you will have accomplished? What, if you look back on this and said, not only did I accomplish the miles, but I did this, what would that be?
We want to start that, Will? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, tying it back into our bigger goal and the motivation behind this whole thing is to impact people, to get the word out about epilepsy. And you would be amazed at how many folks we've met thus far in the journey who have some connection to epilepsy in their life, and who we've been able to touch and interact with. And even the folks who, like me, before coming in to this, didn't know much about epilepsy. Hopefully we're encouraging them to go find out more, and just kind of tune in to this issue and the people that it affects.
Yeah, I think, Laura, I can honestly say, without being too corny, that the trip would, the endurance and the physical part of it is very challenging and fun for those of us who like that sort of thing, like your partner Kevin, and certainly Will fits that category as well. But the epilepsy thing is so important to give meaning to why we're doing this. We're out here for a very long time, and I can tell you that without that purpose, it would be a little hollow. And so it's been very, very rewarding to feel like you've impacted some people, and people have been so generous about giving. We're originally, our goal was 75,000. We're up to 45,000. And a whole bunch of people I know said, I'm not giving money until I know that you're going to finish. So I have a few more people out there holding out, and I'm hoping we can get a well above 100 grand. So that's sort of my goal. And so it's it'll be really nice to affect some people. And then the other thing I would just say is that these kinds of things, they just start by sort of one step, by leaving, by deciding you're going to do it. I mean, I never would have thought I would have done something like this a year or two ago, and hopefully we've inspired a few people along the way to do something for a purpose and to do something that's a bit challenging mentally and physically. So
yeah, and I think the money is really important, and we appreciate it so much. The awareness is huge. I think, Will, you mentioned that you met so many people that have a connection to epilepsy, and you never hear about it because epilepsy, for the most part, is still, something that people don't talk about. There's still a lot of stigma associated. So the more people we get out there to say, oh my gosh, my son has epilepsy, or my sister has epilepsy, I have epilepsy, people aren't forthright about it. And so it's harder to reach people because people aren't really out about it, right? So please don't diminish, the money is great, the personal challenge and what you'll accomplish is wonderful, but the awareness is huge. So Jack, thank you so much for doing this on behalf of the Epilepsy Foundation and all the people with epilepsy. Will, thanks you for your support. I know that he couldn't do it without you. So thanks so much. Be safe out there and stay hydrated.
Thank you. See you guys. See you all.